You all go very kindly, lads. I was explaining to somebody the other day how we actually the whole thing happens to go very quiet. Okay, you're very welcome to our breakfast webcast this morning again. This is the sixth in our series of webcasts looking at organisational change. And over the last 5 weeks, we've been looking at the whole build-up in terms of how you get the organisation right in the first place. We're looking at the strategic review, then looking at basically the communications around why change needs to happen. Then going from there, looking at the whole notion of putting together the redundancy, how that works, with some case studies in and around that. And now we're at the stage where that pretty much has gone through its cycle. In other words, the redundancies have happened at this point, and now we're looking to see how do we manage to build from there. So really what we've done is we've taken the pain at this point, we've explained why it needs to happen, and then ready for, as it were, for lift-off, which I suppose maybe is a metaphor that we could use for today. So in doing that, what are the issues that we need to look at? How do we manage to capitalise on all of the work we've done so far, all of the investment in time, energy, effort, money, and in some cases pain? How do we manage to make that work for us? So we've got the panel here today again to talk about this. We've got Martin Farrelly here back with us again. Martin is, as you know, has been involved in this area for a number of years and knows everything there is to know about this. We've got Mick O'Connell as well, John Guinan, and Frank Thomas back again. Frank, our resident, as it is at this stage, barrister at this point. Can't get rid of Frank. Frank, you're back. You're great to have you back again to talk about this. Look, but lads, first of all, if we can just talk about this whole notion of we've taken the pain and now people could at this stage pretty much relax, but that's not what it's about. What's the dynamic like at this point when we decide at this stage we're going to now have lift-off, as it were? What do we need to be doing? Mick?
Yeah, well, I think it's important to say you've drawn a line in the sand because a lot of the restructuring and change efforts have passed, and that the organisation must be engaged towards the achievement of future goals, which are not going to be easy in themselves because we know with the environment out there it's still very volatile. So I think it's about having a clarity as to what your vision is for the future, what your value proposition for your customers is, what your roles are in the organisation, and how you're going to achieve your goals. And a key thing in that is to engage the organisation to actually achieve them. You know, and I think one of the things about engagement is there has been a lot of talk in the past about staff satisfaction, are staff happy, whereas a lot of the research now says that it's not about happiness or it's not about satisfaction. It's about having people engaged in what they're doing. In fact, a lot of the research would show that staff dissatisfaction creates better performance than satisfaction in certain instances. Because, well, I think it's the satisfaction. If you're a football team, Peter, and you have a bad performance and you believe you can do better, what drives you on to do better? It's the dissatisfaction with your last performance. You know, so.
But you're not saying
if you're on a winning streak, you just might get complacent. Right. Whereas a lot of the time, I think it's the actual sense of what's the stimulus to change. Sometimes it's dissatisfaction.
Well, it's dissatisfaction, I suppose, with a motivation to put it right rather than just dissatisfaction. People are cheesed off with the organisation.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, so in doing,
I suppose,
John.
I was going to say that, I mean, one of the critical steps is just to make sure that we have clarity around the new direction we're heading. And one of the ways to do that is, first of all, to make sure that the management team have bought in. And certainly from experience that I've had with one or two companies, if you do a kind of an exercise and say, looking out 18 months or 2 years at the most, what are the sort of three things that we want to have achieved, the really top three things that we as a company and as a team want to have achieved? Yeah. And having done that then, say, look, also look at it from the customer's point of view and say what it is that we want our customers to say about us in 18 months or 2 years that we did for them and we did as a business. And I think that exercise, sometimes called a shared mindset exercise, will get the team behind it and then can be, I suppose, put out to the business and say, look, this is where we're travelling. Because I think you've got to give people now a sense of hope. We've been over tough times. Those who are there are probably still unsure about their role or where we're going or will the business survive. So there's a degree to which you've got to paint a picture and give a vision and say, look, this is where we're heading. Maybe we're not be sure how we're going to get there yet, but this is where we're going. I don't want everyone to come in behind it.
So I was saying that up to now, given the fact that there was all this hassle going on internally, given the fact that redundancies, that to a large extent, you know, inevitably the focus was inwards.
Absolutely.
And now the time is there.
Get out there.
And I think the real, like, there's a nice quote that Dave Ulrich, one of the leading business thinkers, has put out there before, where he says, "Value is in the eye of the receiver, not the giver." And back to John's point, you know, if you're looking at where you're going to go, you need to do it from the point of view of what your customer wants. Yeah. You need to understand where the customer is coming from. And, you know, we've been involved, a few of us around the table, with a particular organisation where they've gone through that journey. And, you know, they had their difficult time. There was a coming together of disparate organisations. they've arrived at a point, and what the top team are saying is that we need to be offering a different business proposition for our clients, and what is it? And they've gone out and engaged with their business, they've gone out and engaged with their staff, they've run it through, and they're now beginning to see, your word earlier, a dynamic shift around how they offer it to their customers and how staff are responding to that. And they're beginning to see real traction in terms of, and the feedback from the business that they serve is very, very positive.
And I think that's a massive change for companies, because if you look at the last 10 years, a lot of companies were managing demand as opposed to creating demand. You know, the demand was manifesting itself for them. So they weren't being unduly challenged in terms of their selling skills or their, you know, in some instances their marketing skills. Whereas now, you know, the recession that's out there is just challenging companies to fundamentally look at, well, what actually does create value for our customers? And how creative can we be in terms of actually designing it?
How can we deliver it? Because we have to deliver to different customers in different ways and liaise with them differently.
And there's a different problem arising from the point Mick makes, which is very valid, is what are you measuring now? Because what you measured in the past was that type of, you know, responsiveness rather than actually proactively going out and trying to generate stuff. So you need to shift and think about how do you actually measure things across the organisation to make sure you're getting the value you need.
But you know, without sounding too business schooly about this, but look, because we're talking, this is supposed to be a very practical, you know, reality we're talking about in here, wet Wednesday morning and stuff. Is it true to say that, look, this really can be a big opportunity for people to reassess their whole business, see what the priorities are, look at the way they go to market, look at the way they measure themselves, the way they set themselves up? Is that actually true in reality on the ground, or is that just kind of a page in a book?
I think it's a necessity. It's not even a privilege that they have. It's a necessity because the difficult conditions most companies are trading in is forcing them to look at that. And I think if you were to summarise it, just going on what Martin says, that your model has to change to become an outside-in model, which is that you start with your customers, or who you regard as your customers, and you have to engage with them and see what creates value for them and design your product offering around that.
Well, I certainly have come across, I've never seen so many companies out actually talking with their customers, listening to what they have to say. I've never seen this happen in the last 10 years. There's more of this happening now than it's happened before. There's a massive shift towards people now beginning to appreciate customers and clients and what they actually want. Because I think there was an arrogance over the last, I suppose, 6 or 7 years.
And I think what you have is certain industries do things in different cycles. But, you know, certainly you're seeing coming into more traditional businesses now a very clear approach around key account management, for example, where people are beginning to segment their customers and understand where they get most of the return from and concentrate their efforts there. They're not forgoing those other customers, but they're actually structuring their business model so that the greater time is taken up by the ones who create the most.
Okay.
But that has repercussions inside as well, because I mean, in addition to spending the time with the customers, which they are doing, the reality is the staff are probably having to behave in new ways, and are probably in new types of role. So I think there's a lot of